Okay, so I just finished recording two other videos. One about Wicked 2, in which I referenced Return to Oz because I've had Oz on the brain. I made a video about Angel's Egg. And because Return to Oz ends with like egg stuff, and I watched it the day after, I had to bring up Return to Oz. So I think it's time I just go ahead and talk about Return to Oz. I got to watch this movie earlier this week. I believe it was Thursday, might have been Friday. And I'd never seen it before. And I had been wanting to watch this movie for years. All I knew about it is that it's a sequel to The Wizard of Oz. And it doesn't feel like it. Like all of like the whimsy and like that like good fairy tale vibe. That is not here. Like this movie is disturbing. This movie is scary. This movie is weird. Like The Wizard of Oz is weird in like a, fun fairy tale kind of way. Like there's a dude made of tin. There's some monkeys that are flying. This is weird in the like Dorothy Gale and all that like heads are screaming as this headless woman wakes up out of bed and is trying to grab Dorothy. Kind of weird. Genuinely, if I had seen this movie as a child, I probably would have been terrified of it. Watching it as an adult, this movie rules. I had so much fun watching Return to Oz. I've never played McGee's Alice, but from what I understand, it is about like Alice in Wonderland happens, but now Alice is in an asylum, or it's maybe like the first game isn't like that, but the second game is, because I think there's ones like she's in an asylum, and the people in the asylum don't treat her well, but she ends up going back to Wonderland, but now Wonderland's like super weird and influenced by all her stuff in the asylum, and like blah, 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 blah. And like, was that just inspired from Return to Oz? I think, was Sucker Punch kind of like that too? Did Sucker Punch start off with that? I don't quite remember. I watched Sucker Punch when it came out, and I remember watching that movie. Like, this is like Alice in Wonderland if a lot of it took place in a brothel and was just like an action movie. It's a Zack Snyder film, and I don't know, maybe if I rewatched it, I really wouldn't like it. I thought Sucker Punch ruled. Like, I love this kind of story about not just an isekai. What was it that triggered that conversation? Maybe it was watching The Wizard of Oz. Sorry, because I remember having a conversation with Clay about, like, what is, like, the original isekai story? Like, The Wizard of Oz is up there. Alice is up there. I don't remember which one came out first. Because Oz, I think, came out in 1900. I want to say Alice, because they're both public domain. Alice might have come out a little bit after, but I'm not sure. There's maybe an argument that Dante's Inferno is an isekai. He does go to another world, but you can argue because he's more like a guest there than you're trapped in hell, like, I'm sorry. But also, like, with Alice, it's just a dream, so can it really be an isekai if it's a dream? But with Dorothy, I think it depends on the version, like if it's just a dream or if it's not. Anyway, I'm sorry, I'm going off on a huge tangent. It's the kind of stuff that I was thinking of. But even just the fact that the whole thing is like, oh yeah, Dorothy's still talking about Oz, and it's been maybe like a year, like I think it's like 6 months is what they said. Like it's a few months afterwards, and she's still talking about it, and everyone's like, yeah, that's nice. Girl, you're kind of crazy. That didn't happen. This no longer feels like someone had a really cool dream and want to keep telling people about it, or yeah, it's a kid with an imaginary friend. You think this was real. We need to fix this. So she's taken to an asylum and she's going to undergo like shock therapy, which gets interrupted. Maybe, or she is in shock therapy and this is all what she's seeing. After I watched the film, I told my friend about the Wheelers, and I described them as like, dude, this is awesome. It is like the combination of a jester, a bike, and an 80s bully. Like, what an idea. Like, it's just such a weird concept. But that's the thing. They're not just like a bully. It's like those specific bullies you see like 80s shows and movies, like 90s shows and movies, where they're like just very ridiculously over the top. And just the way they move. And that's just kind of the way they talk kind of shit. I'm like, what? This is so weird and so funny. And if I was a kid, I'd be terrified. Because when you first see them, it's like there's a face, but they kind of ride like this. I don't know if it's like their helmet or something, but there's like a face on it. That's creepy as hell. When they lift it up and you just see a dude, I'm like, this is significantly less creepy and way more funny. But yeah, as a kid, I know I'd be terrified. I can't help but laugh at TikTok because it's spelled just like the app. It's TikTok. I'm like, okay, that's a slightly distracting. Not the movie's fault. I love TikTok. Just an idea is like, yeah, it's like, so you have to wind up his thinking, you have to wind up his talking, you have to wind up his acting. Because, you know, people can act without thinking, they can talk without thinking, and all of that kind of stuff. I think she was like, how can you, like, talk without thinking? It's like, my girl, you'd be surprised at how many times that happens. And I think the Scarecrow has a very similar line in The Wizard of Oz. No, it's either he says something like that, or I think it's something the wizard says to him when he gives him the diploma. I'm like, that line aged incredibly well. That's hilarious. But what I love is that TikTok is, how do I want to say it? He's really good and really useful with a very clear weakness, and that weakness does bite them a few times, and I like that. I like that there's like a cost-benefit analysis with TikTok, and it's super cool. Jack is just kind of an idiot, but he's a good boy, and I love him. Also, they just keep Bellina in the head, because instead of Toto being in the party, it's Bellina, one of the chickens. And unlike Toto, she can just talk in Oz. Okay, I'm totally fine with that. They mentioned that TikTok is not alive, even though like he very clearly is, but he's not technically alive. And he's totally fine with it. I don't remember what the line. It's something about how he's like proud to not be alive. He's like, I'm lifeless and proud. I'm like, boy, that would be like such a good meme to use. There's a point where they like basically like they take a moose head off. Well, it's called a gump, but like they take a moose head, put it on a sofa, and like attach some stuff to it so they can make like a makeshift bird so they can what was her name? Princess like Mom's, what was it? It was something like that. But they can escape the headless lady, and this dude is just like, man, I kind of didn't want to be alive, but now I am, and my body was not very well constructed. I was made to fly poorly, I might add. I was not made to turn. Like, he's really funny. The Deadly Desert. The Deadly Desert. How do I want to say this? I felt like I was a kid playing in the park when I watched Dorothy in the Deadly Desert. Is her just saying to Bellina, like, no, like, you know, any living thing that touches the sand will instantly get turned to sand. You know, we just gotta cross it. Oop, oop, oop. And, like, gets through it. And I'm just like, that is the exact kind of shit that I would do as a kid. You know, like the floor is lava sort of thing. And I love that. And then, yeah, you see a couple wheelers touch it and instantly turn to sand. Like, oh, no, yeah, that works. The rocks have faces, but the face will, like, move between different rocks, and it looks really cool. And just when you'll see it, like, in the mountain talking to the Gnome King, but you don't see the Gnome King, I love how that face moves. Like, it's so cool and it's so creepy. But some of the dialogue just actually, it felt like I was watching a Robot Chicken parody at times. Like, I don't even remember specifically, but just the things the Gnome King would say and the way he would say them just felt so weird. And I kind of just loved it. But then we get to him. I loved the Gnome King. Just, like, there's so many things he says to Dorothy that are, like, so funny. Like, there's one bit where he's like, yeah, this is how my game works. But you didn't tell me that's what I was sacrificing. Well, you didn't ask. Like, that's not on me. Like, but that's unfair. You think it's unfair? Well, I don't. And the only thing that matters is what I think. So you can play or not. It's up to you. Like, it's this weird amount of cordial, malevolent, and goofiness at the same time. Because, like, you'll see villains who are polite and friendly, and maybe it's a facade to let you lower your guard, like with Jafar. Maybe it's not. And it's like, no, like, I'm just genuinely, like, a polite, intelligent kind of person. We're just on opposite sides. But then you've got this guy where it's like, it's very clearly a front, but I can almost be convinced that to some degree it maybe isn't. And part of it is because of just like how silly, like just the way he delivers his lines. The moment with the ruby slippers, where he's like, you know, Dorothy, you don't have to go in there. You don't have to play my game. I could just send you home. I have these. And so you see, because like he's just like a face in a rock, but then as they keep losing the game and he's getting his sacrifices, he's becoming more and more human. So like it's just a dude with like painted skin, which is awesome. But then he's like, oh yeah, and he like opens his robe a little bit to show off his dainty ruby slippers. Is really funny. But you're also like, oh, that's bad. And he's like, no, yeah, like I can just send you home. Like, but what about my friends? Like, yeah, I mean, like, what about them? You always just have to click my heels together. There's no place like home. There's no place like home. Like, oh, you bastard. And even when she sees them, it's like, those are my ruby slippers. My ruby slippers. And then when, again, was it Momsy, I think was her name? When she shows up to talk to him, he's like, kneel. So she gets down lower. So she gets all the way down, like pushes her head against the floor. Lower. Just, I feel like I'm repeating myself. I'm like, I just want to talk about him. Like, I just want to like quote what he says and like the way he says it. Like, he's so smarmy. Gosh, I hated him. He was awesome. And yeah, just everything in like Momsy's place, like all the heads, like this is fucking cool. This is creepy as hell. I love it. Oh gosh, when I finally saw the Scarecrow, I was like, oh, he might be the creepiest thing in the movie. Like, something about that mask. Like, I don't know. I wasn't having it. And then when we get back to reality, snap back to reality. Oh, to go gravity. Oh, sorry. When we get back and we find out, it's like, oh yeah, Dorothy, so you'll never guess what happened. The hospital was struck by lightning and everyone survived. Everyone? Okay, not the doctor, you know, like he ran back in and like he died in the fire. Like, damn! Wow, that is vicious! It's like, yeah, you're like, the doctor becomes the Gnome King and like his assistant becomes like Princess Momsy and all that, and she ends up getting arrested and... Dang, he just died. Like, I'm sorry, I just wasn't expecting. It's like, there's some things in the movie that I knew. I'm not even sure what exactly I knew, because I think I had seen the heads before, but I'd forgotten about it, and I didn't really know the context. But this movie is, like, so aggressively dark and aggressively mean that it, number one, becomes so satisfying to see Dorothy get out of all of these situations, to overcome all of these trials, and to make her new friends. But it's also kind of, in a way that's funny. Again, most of what the Gnome King says, like he's like a very childlike bully who's like, oh, I have power and some authority. I'm going to use it. and I'm going to pretend that I care about you. But it's mostly just for my amusement. Because the only thing that matters is what I think. I don't really have much else to say about it. Just, this movie rules. And if you haven't seen it, please do. I'm glad I finally did. That's it. See you.